verse. So praise Yahweh. If you'll all please stand. I'd like to turn it over to the next teacher, the great Kahan Benjamin Krause Hawkins.
Shabbat Shalom, great saints of Yahweh. May the peace of Yahweh be with each and every one of you. You may be seated. Does anybody know what today is? I don't think anybody knows what today is. I don't even know if it's the first of Abraham yet. But I do know it's 7/14, so that's another 777, right? We're going to continue on this theme. You know, last week, Pastor talked about this race that he had with Yeshurun and Bill. It takes two of them to make one of him. Notice that? It took two of him to beat Pastor. I don't know if they beat him or not, but now that I got their attention, praise Yahweh. Can I have my next slide? We're going to be talking about that tag number again. You know, it's this never-ending well of information, so get ready. And before we go any further, I want to play a video, because I don't know that a lot of people here remember, but the great Kahan Shaul Hawkins gave a sermon about the white stone back in 2010, and he's the one that actually initially told us about this dream that Pastor had about the white stone. So can we play the video, please?
In his dream, he saw a white stone, and the stone was bent like a finger would be bent at the knuckle. So it had a bottom part, and then it went up like that at an angle. Now, on that stone, there were 3 numbers written. From top to bottom, it was the number 17, the number 28, and the number 74. And then Pastor woke up, and with the thought in his mind that this is my lot. Now, this dream that Pastor had, this took place back in March of 2009. March of 2009. March of 2009. Now, this, if you remember your history here, and it wasn't so long ago, this was at the height of all the stress and persecution that was taking place.
Okay. Can I have my next slide? In that sermon, that was 10:1:10, Pastor also spoke about the chief cornerstone. Okay? And that's interesting because if you remember, the Yahmatria for the cornerstone, if I can have my next slide, is 1074. Okay, now, can we go back 3 slides? We're talking today about the perfect number. The perfect number, right there, 1074, the perfect number. I'm going to show you why it's called the perfect number. Okay, now go forward, because we're not going to be talking about Pastor's sermon about the chief cornerstone. We're going to be talking about the white stone dream. You see that? 1074, the white stone dream. Now remember the date. It was 3/11/09. Keep that in your mind. Okay, can I have my next slide? Because the great Kahan Shaul, his whole sermon was based on Revelation 2:17. So you see Revelation 2 is 1074. Let's turn there to Revelation 2:17 about this white stone. 2:17 on page 972 says, "He who has an ear, let him hear what the Spirit says to the called out ones." I want you to remember something about 2:17. Revelation 2:17 is actually the 37th verse in Revelation. 37 is 37 or 777. Okay, you need to keep these in your mind because it's all tied to Pastor's 777 dream. And actually all these dreams he's had and these visions are all tied together, if you're taking notice. It's the 37th scripture in Revelation. If double 37 is 74, which is Pastor's other lot number. And 17 means to overcome and prevail. You know, Bollinger actually put that in Bollinger's commentary. Okay, now, Psalm 17 also speaks of the sentence of acquittal in Psalm 17:2, if you want to write that down for your notes. Also, double 17 is 34, which is when Pastor was born. So you can see how important this number is, 17. So let's read 2:17. Who has an ear, let him hear what the Spirit says to the called out ones. Can I have my next slide? You remember, next slide, called out ones. This is 1074. So follow with me. To the called out ones of the house of Yahweh, to him who overcomes, I will give to eat of the hidden manna. Can I have my next slide? He who overcomes. Okay, it's mentioned 7 times in Revelation 2 and 3. Overcoming. Overcoming. Think of purple. Think of perfection. Okay, think of those sin no more. Think of those things we've learned. I will give him a white stone, a sentence of acquittal, and in the stone a restored name. Can I have the next slide? Okay, we see white stone, and you notice there's a number in the middle there, and that's Pastor's birth date. But also, if you remember, 828 is when he went to the United Nations, 828:00 in 2000. And 828 is also in the word Israel, the word Israel. It comes from word number 8280. Remember, drop the 0. You're going to see Israel in this, okay? The perfect stone. The perfect stone, 1074. Remember the white stone. White signifying purity, okay? Pureness. And the white robe of humility. That's how we're going to obtain this white stone, okay? Can I have my next slide? The rock of perfection. Notice that, 1074. I'm hoping you're writing down these or going, at least go back later and study these. Can I have my next slide? A restored name. Remember what he's saying here. A restored name. Well, who restored? Who restored the book of Yahweh and the house of Yahweh? Who was involved in this? What was his name and when was he born? Can you tell me? Yisrael Hawkins, that's why you see the 828. Can I have my next slide? Remember, he was hidden in Oklahoma, hidden to restore. Hidden to restore, 1074. Remember the great white buffalo, hidden to restore the house of Yahweh. Can I have my next slide? Now, you can make it your white stone. We can all make it our white stone. By following in the footsteps of the greatest teacher in the world, we can make this white stone ours. Okay, we can make it ours. Okay, we can overcome. As the great deacon just before me just got done speaking about. Can we go to the next slide? Now, here's how we're going to do it. In 2010, when the great Kohan gave that sermon, it was in the 10th Roman month. Can we stay up on that slide, please? Okay, this is how we're going to do it. You see that picture? Let's look a little closer. We're going to believe into the one sent. Next slide. You see that? In him we trust. In him. Who's him? Pastor Israel Hawkins. You see the arrow pointing at him? In him. Israel Hawkins, we need to believe into the one sent. That's how we're going to obtain this white stone, okay, of acquittal, a sentence of acquittal. Can I have my next slide? Now, from the 13th book of Israel, part 1, Pastor says in chapter 1, verse 31, he says, if you remember the vision I had of the rain, but it was gold flakes that were falling. This occurred on 777. Did you remember that? That was the date, 777. I didn't remember that, but somebody told me. They wrote it down. 777, and he showed me gold. And of course, he said, now this is what it meant. I know now I'm going to turn you from this wood and metal and silver. I'm going to bring the gold out. So he had me arrested. He had me arrested because he's bringing us to the gold. So he had me arrested and put in jail because we were preaching this message to the world. And the world hates us. So I was arrested, wanting to stop this work. That's how much they love it. That's how much they loved it when Yeshua brought it. Can I have my next slide? Remember, the world cannot hate you, but it hates me because of the testimony I bring against it that its works are evil. Is 1074. Who's that speaking about? Can I have my next slide? Because he preaches the laws of Yahweh. Now, let's look at where he was prosecuted. Next slide. at the bared court. Notice the lettering up there? Now, I'm not speaking evil of the bared court. They're only doing what their teacher taught them. And they've since said they were sorry for the things they've done. Praise Yahweh for that. And remember, we were taught to pray for our enemies. Okay? And remember, the V is in place of the U. Can I have my next slide? The bared courthouse, where 1074 was put on a display for the whole world. Is that a coincidence? No. They played a big part in the work of Yahweh and lifting the work up to the world. Okay? And remember our great overseer, the next slide. He went through this. It was a badge of honor to him. That's Yahshua's mouth. Remember what he was telling those deputies? Yahshua's mouth, 1074, he said, I'm teaching the same thing he did. Remember what he was telling them as they were leading him into the courtroom? How he was preaching the same thing Yahshua spoke. He's Yahshua's mouth. Can I have my next slide? He's also Yahshua's, the face and voice of Yahweh. There's the face and voice of Yahweh to us right there. You see that? Can I have my next slide? Now, when you add up all of his lot numbers, we brought this out before, you get 119. And I want you to think of Psalm 119. Can I have my next slide? Because in Psalm 119, 135, he says, make your face shine on your servants. Make your face shine on your servants. You see that shining face? How many of you would like to have a face that looks like that? I'm not talking about the beard, ladies, and I'm talking about the, that glow, that character. That, look at him smiling through the persecution. Look at this. Can we do that? Now, keep in mind Psalm 119. Actually, turn over there, please. Turn over to Psalm 119. Put up my next slide, please. Remember, Yahweh said, I am the Aleph and the Tau. In Psalm 119, you can read, you put the Aleph, Bet, Gamil, Daleth, He, Waz, Zayin, Chet, Teth, Yod, Kaf, Lamed, Mem, Nun, Samek, Ayin, Pei, Zadi, Kof, Resh, Shin, and Natau. And look whose number comes up. That's right, because that number is not a new number. It's only new because, well, license tags just came out in 1933 and 34 up there in where he got that tag right there. I showed the license plates. The first ones issued up there was in 1933 and 1934, the year that Pastor was conceived and born. Can I have my next slide? You can do the same thing again, only this time just put Hawkins at the end. Put Hawkins at the end and look what you get. What a coincidence. Can I have my next slide? You get 1074 for you in Radio Land. I know I got to say them because you won't see him on the radio like Daniel did. Okay, so Ecclesiastes 1, 9, and 10. It's on your screen. It says, that which has already been will be yet again. That which has already been done is what will be done again. There's nothing new. Is there anything of which it may be said, look, this is new? Notice, 1074. There's nothing new about that number. It's been from the beginning. We're just seeing it now, okay? And we're seeing it in all the books from Genesis to Revelation. It's already been in ancient times well before us. And you can also tie that in with the two Abels, the first Abel and the last Abel, okay? Remember that. It's not new, okay? This is just being renewed. It's being redone again, replayed again, another showdown, okay, between the two. Pope Francis and Pastor Israel Hawkins. Okay, can we go to the next slide? Now, Pastor's white stone dream was on 3/11/09. Notice how many days that was after 777. Remember, the perfect stone, and what makes us perfect, house of Yahweh? The laws of Yahweh. Remember Psalm 19:7. The laws of Yahweh are perfect, and they'll make us perfect. Remember Psalm 119:96. says, the perfection required and embodied in your laws is boundless. Notice the number, 613. Okay, notice that. It's not a coincidence. Can I have my next slide? And remember when Pastor had his 777 dream, he said, today is the 777, 777, 777. Notice the number 711. 711 means purple. Can I have my next slide? Remember, we went from the red, gold, green, and purple. 777. You see that? Is that a coincidence? No, it's not, because Yahweh's going to prove to be a unity in these last days. Can I have my next slide? Yahweh's a unity. 1074, Deuteronomy 6:4. You want to be part of the real royal family house of Yahweh? Not the one in the United Kingdom across the ocean. The one right here. The United Kingdom right here. In this, by the way, Ireland in the south is not part of the UK. I got to correct myself from last week. It was actually the one in the north there. But can we have my next slide? The United Kingdom, 1074, home of the true royal family. Okay, the purple, remember? Can I have my next slide? The United Nation. You see that? 1074. And remember, they're going to come to us, house of Yahweh, and the obedience of the nations are going to belong to us right here. Okay, the United Nation. There's not going to be a bunch of nations everywhere. He's going to make us one nation. One nation under Israel and Yahshua and Yahweh, okay? Everybody like that idea? You know, speaking of the United Nations, can I have my next slide? Bawa Jain, if you notice, his real name was Preminder Nath Jain. He's the one that opened the door at the UN for pastor. Notice his number, 1074. Wow, all this just must be a coincidence, house of Yahweh. Or Yahweh's been at work really hard in this plan this whole time, right? Can I have my next slide? The perfect nation, 1074. And when you add up all those numbers, it's 1865, which means liberty. 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 That reminds me of Psalm 119:45. We walk at liberty because we seek your precepts. Can I have my next slide? We walk at liberty. See that? Because we believe into the one sent. You see the word liberty? And look at 2010. Just drop the 2 zeros. That's 21. That's 777. That's why all these things were done when they were done. Okay, now, I got to switch gears for a moment. The Pope's armies. We've shown this before. Papal armies, remember, was 666. And I want you to remember something about Revelation 6. You know, a bow is given to this Vatican to make war. The NATO Deputy Secretary General to Vatican City. Notice they go to meet with the Pope. This is from NATO's own website. NATO Secretary General meets Pope Francis. This is from the NATO website, by the way. And I want you to notice these Yahmatrias here. NATO Wars 666. And remember, who's pulling the strings? It's the Pope's bow. It's the Pope's bow. NATO 666, Pope's bow. And here we go. Here's an article. The NATO, the tool of European neo-fascism and Pope's blessed silence. The Pope's involved with this. NATO, remember, that's his tool. It's Rome's tool, NATO, 666, okay? And why is it given to him? Notice this. And power was given to them over a fourth part of the earth to kill. 666. That's Revelation 6 for your notes if you want to read it. And at this time, I've got to get out of here, but it's been a blessing and an honor and privilege. Go back and research these slideshows. You know, if you didn't get everything, go back and, you know, you'll find plenty yourself. It's not a coincidence. Yahweh is working with this house and this house only. So if you'd all please stand. It's my great honor and opportunity to present to you the great Kohan Yehuda Hawkins.